Imagine driving alone on a dark highway at 2 a.m. The only sound is the steady hum of your truck engine, the rhythmic tapping of the windshield wipers as rain lashes against the glass, and the occasional rustle of leaves as the wind sweeps across the road. The highway stretches ahead like a black river, broken only by the dim glow of your headlights cutting through the night. Everything seems normal, almost serene, until it isn't. That prickling sensation crawling up your spine, the sudden feeling that you are not, and perhaps never were, entirely alone on the road. It's in moments like these that the most terrifying encounters happen, moments you'll remember long after you've parked your truck and gone home. Today, I want to tell you about two of the darkest, most chilling true stories from truck drivers who experience things that defy explanation. Real experiences, real fear. Experiences that will make you reconsider every late-night drive you've ever taken. Before we dive in, I want you to think for a moment. If you were driving alone, headlights slicing through the endless black of the highway, rain hammering against your windshield, would you keep going if you felt something watching you? Let me know in the comments. Now, let's start with the first story. John had been driving trucks across the Midwest for over 20 years. He was the kind of man who had seen every stretch of highway countless times, who knew which exits were safe and which roads were notorious for accidents. He was experienced, confident, and careful, but that night, none of that mattered. That night, something happened that would haunt him for the rest of his life. It was just past 2:30 a.m., and John was exhausted, having driven for nearly 12 hours without rest. The highway was empty, save for the occasional flicker of his headlights illuminating the rain-soaked asphalt. The storm was light but steady, misting everything with a wet sheen and casting everything in a ghostly glow. And then, in the corner of his vision, he saw her, a figure standing alone on the shoulder. A young woman, drenched, waving for a ride. John hesitated. Picking up hitchhikers was not unusual, but something about her seemed off. She didn't run toward the truck, didn't wave frantically. She moved almost too deliberately, almost unnaturally, and yet she radiated vulnerability. Compassion won over caution, and John pulled over. The rain poured down harder now, and the sound of it on the roof of his truck was deafening. She climbed in silently, shivering, murmuring thanks that barely reached him over the sound of the storm. He tried to start a conversation, asking where she was headed, trying to offer reassurance. She gave nothing but faint nods, barely acknowledging his words. He couldn't see her face clearly, only glimpses, shadows and shapes shifting in the dim light of the dashboard. Something about her eyes. He couldn't see them well, but he felt them on him, intense, almost knowing. The miles passed. John felt the temperature in the cab drop suddenly, an icy chill that had no explanation. He tried to dismiss it, telling himself the storm and his fatigue were to blame. Then he noticed the wet footprints, small, perfect prints across the dashboard and the edge of the seat. She hadn't touched anything, not a cup, not the door, not even the seat belt, and yet there they were, damp and cold against the fabric. His heart began to race. He asked her again, gently, "What's your name?" No answer. The only sound was the rhythmic slap of rain and the soft hum of the truck engine. A shiver ran down his spine. Then, just as he glanced at the rearview mirror, he saw her eyes, glowing faintly, almost phosphorescent in the darkness. A chill gripped him, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. By the time he reached the next exit, he turned to speak to her, and she was gone. Completely gone. No doors had opened, no footprints on the floor, no hint that she had ever been there. He drove the rest of the way to the nearest truck stop, trembling, trying to convince himself it had been a trick of his mind. Sleep deprivation, stress, exhaustion, anything. But deep down, he knew better. 20 years later, John still avoids that stretch of highway after dark. The memory of the young woman, her impossible presence, etched into his mind. If that story gave you chills, brace yourself. The next one is even stranger. This isn't just about a fleeting encounter with something that may or may not be human. This is about a place, a rest stop, that seems to possess a will of its own. Mike had been a long-haul truck driver for 15 years. Experienced, cautious, a man who rarely panicked. But even Mike would tell you that some nights on the road are better left unexperienced. One such night, after a grueling stretch of driving without sleep, he pulled into a remote rest area along a desolate interstate. It was small, almost forgotten, and the neon sign flickered intermittently, buzzing like a live wire. The air was damp, heavy with fog, and the silence felt unnatural. It wasn't quiet, it felt alive, watching him. He parked and stepped out, stretching his legs, trying to shake off the fatigue. At first it seemed normal, too normal. No other trucks, no cars, no movement at all. Just the distant whistle of wind cutting across the lot. As he walked toward the restroom, he noticed something odd. A bench he had passed a moment ago was now several feet away from its original position. Mike froze, telling himself he was imagining things. Fatigue again, a trick of the fog and dim neon light. Then came the footsteps, echoing, soft but deliberate, across the concrete. He turned quickly. Nothing. Empty. Mike's instincts screamed at him. He turned back toward his truck, the hairs on his neck standing on end. As he approached, shadows began to move unnaturally along the walls. Stretching, twisting, forming patterns that should not exist. And then from the corner of his eye, he saw them figures, dark and humanoid, yet wrong. They didn't walk. They glided. Impossible, unnatural. Mike could hardly breathe, a tightening in his chest, panic clawing at him. He reached the truck, slammed the door, and locked it. Even inside, the whispers began. Faint, taunting, barely audible. He revved the engine, the vibration of the truck under him somehow intensifying the feeling that he was still being watched. He didn't wait to assess, didn't look back at the lot again. He drove off, heart hammering, eyes darting to the mirrors, seeing fleeting shadows flit across them. By the time he reached the next town, he reported what he had seen to the local police, only to be met with confusion. Cameras at the rest stop showed an empty parking lot. Nothing. No shadows, no figures, nothing to explain the unease that gripped Mike. He never returned, and he warns others to avoid that stretch of highway if they value their peace of mind. Truck drivers see things most people never imagine. Things that lurk in the fog, in the darkness, in the small hours of the morning when the road is empty and the world is asleep. Sometimes these experiences leave a permanent mark, a lingering sense that reality is thinner than we believe, and that some places on the road are better left unexplored. Now think about it. The midnight hitchhiker who vanished without a trace, or the haunted rest stop that seemed alive with shadows and whispers which would scare you more? Could you keep driving after seeing something like that? Could you sleep that night knowing that you had brushed against the unexplainable, the impossible? These are not stories made up for entertainment. They are accounts from people who spend their lives on the road, alone, in the dark, with only their instincts to guide them. The road holds secrets that most of us will never understand. And for those who drive it at night, the possibility of encountering something beyond explanation is never far away. If you've ever had an experience on the road that made your blood run cold, share it in the comments below. We might feature your story in our next video. And if you enjoyed these chilling tales, make sure to like this video and subscribe. The world of truckers, the lonely highways, and the shadows that linger just out of sight, they're waiting for you if you dare to look. Remember, the next time you find yourself alone on the highway at 2 a.m., keep your eyes on the road, but be aware, some things on the road are not meant to be seen, and some passengers are not meant to be picked up, because sometimes the road has a mind of its own.